Hello once again. You might be asking why again. Basically, this session has been already recorded during Serverless Days 2020 this year, but through some unexpected circumstances, we lost the recording. So I decided, okay, let's do it once again to give you the opportunity, if you haven't already seen that, a way of going through that. The topic, I'm coming back, it's from an idea to a demo product. It was our side project in our company Chaos Gears. We called it Events War. And today I would like to summarize some key concepts and lessons learned we gathered during the implementation and designing phases. For those who don't know, my name is Karol Junde. I'm the VP and CDO at Chaos Gears. We are an advanced AWS consulting partner. I would summarize myself to tell you what I basically do. I leverage AWS services, strictly speaking, serverless ones, to accelerate customers' ideas and save time for innovation. I do consulting, I do implementation, so I'm not afraid of hands-on tasks, but generally I try to focus on serverless applications, serverless designs. That's why I prepared, I think, a nice topic about one of our projects. What's the agenda? I'll start with a quick introduction or telling you what's the reason behind Events War. Then we'll walk through some lessons learned. I called it what's behind the curtain, but basically I would like to pay your attention to some details regarding the architecture and implementation. So you might use it, or you might consider that as some value in your upcoming or current projects. And then I'll try to dispel some stereotypes regarding buzzwords serverless, to stop thinking only about a serverless as an AWS Lambda, if we are talking about AWS, or just functions, because there are tons of services that have serverless features, and you might use it whenever you want. So this chapter is for those who still think that serverless is just the Lambda. And as a conclusion, as a cherry on top, I'd like to share with you my thoughts about serverless as a general paradigm, and tell you what I think about this way of solving problem. Because for me, technology is the way to solve our problems, no matter of what. If there's a space or a gap to be covered with a technology, then we should think how to do that in most cost-effective and the best way we can bring the problem to the end. So when it comes to the idea of Events War, I remember I was sitting in my home and I realized that the pandemic has struck us heavily. And I realized that it opened people to directions of presenting themselves online. So all those people who had previously been living by meeting face to face, doing their businesses in terms of meeting with other people, the pandemic told them, guys, you have to do something with your businesses and start acting and sharing the knowledge you had been sharing before in the online version. And basically, it rolled a huge ball of virtual meetups and webinars, but I realized there is a shortage of a single platform where we could find all webinars, all kinds of events, I mean online events in one place. So that was basically the reason standing behind starting implementation of project, as I mentioned, called Events War. We've set the deadline for the MVP for 1 month because it was a side project. We couldn't put so much effort and reserve enough time to do that in parallel to other projects. So I remember I was coding evenings. My wife was mad up because I decided that, yeah, this is the idea. So let's release that. We involved 2 engineers. Intentionally, I mentioned engineers because 2 people responsible for design and then the implementation. So coding and building a vision of the platform. Just short disclaimer, after first month, so after the first deadline, we got awful graphics, no social media like sharing follow features, because I realized that, yeah, we can create an event. We already provisioned event creation, but there's no value in creating an event without sharing it on the popular social media. So we had to add that, but after the first month, we didn't have enough time to do that. There were lots of issues in the front to be either added or fixed. So to be honest with you, after first month was a tough period of time, and we didn't manage to do everything we planned, but we provisioned the serverless backend as a way of presenting the business logic of our idea. So about the results, I decided to mention about the results after 2.5 months, because we added a graphic designer to make it a little bit more wearable and human friendly. So basically, it's like I mentioned, is the platform for events creation. But what's the greatest value in that? You can create an event without creating a group. So there is pattern like group creation, but you don't have to. You can just enter the events wall, sign up, or provided you are already registered, just sign in, create an event, publish it on your favorite social media stream, and that's all. What you can notice in the picture, you've got different types of events you can add. Besides description and some tags, there is also event URL field. You can either put your predefined URL or click generate button. And right now we are finishing the integration with Zoom, but there is a plan to add more platforms, so stay tuned. So for you to remember, is the platform not only for technical people, but all people who think about switching their businesses to the online version, for those who would like to have one single place for their all events they would like to share with the public. There's a separate view for events, so all the metadata you've created for your particular event are visible for you. There's a same pattern for groups. So as I mentioned, you can either decide to just enter, create an event and forget, or create a group and put all your events you're planning to undergo in one place, which is a bag called the group. You can save it for later. You can leave it whenever you want. I mean, regarding event, you can watch the attendees and all the details about the event. What is also a value, you can look for through the search bar. You can search for events, webinars, or groups based on tags or expressions. So whenever you think about an online event, there is another place for them, and we would like to encourage people to put their ideas into events world. But this is it was because it was in the past. It was a ServerlessDays conference, so we have to talk about serverless. So what's behind the curtain? I'll start with toolset. In my opinion, use the such toolset which allows you to develop MVP for the shortest period of time and provide maximum productivity for all your teammates. So whenever you start thinking about a project, especially MVP, so you've got the limitation for your activities because there is a deadline, probably 1 or maximum 3 months. So use such toolset which is a convenient one for all your teammates. Do not follow buzzwords or some gizmos because somebody else has been using that. Think about your teammates, think about yourself, what is good for you and what will eventually reduce your time and effort you have to pay on your case. In terms of serverless and especially AWS, you've got 2 choices, either a serverless framework or AWS SAM. There are some others, but I would like to mention about those 2 I've been using, but basically we tend to use the former one, I mean the serverless framework. The reason behind that is it has got a lot of plugins. We combined serverless framework extended with Bootstrap, AWS Amplify, and Vue.js for front-end part. But in terms of creating API and all the resources we need for the backend, and Lambda functions, we decided to use serverless framework. I mentioned about the plugins. There are lots of them, so check it if you are thinking about serverless frameworks. But for me, there's one thought. Plugins are like Docker images in Docker Hub. So for me, do not expect them to have all features you need. So if you think about serverless and usage of specific serverless plugin, think what's your goal, because there might be a nice plugin, but it won't solve your problem in the most effective, efficient way. So I've got such pattern that I'm looking for a plugin, trying to test it, but whenever I feel it's putting too much overhead to my project, my decision is to leave it behind and try something different. Do not fix yourself to tools, rather solve problems. Another aspect of serverless projects, your project is growing, and it will definitely grow sooner or later. And you have to keep in mind that you want to keep the consistency of your API. So if we are talking about the API, we're talking about the API gateway in AWS. And there's on one side we get this API consistency, and on another one we get the CloudFormation resources, because behind either serverless framework or AWS SAM, you've got a well-known CloudFormation service, which allows you, AWS CloudFormation service allows you to describe your infrastructure as a code via either JSON or YAML. But it has got its own limits in terms of number of resources. As you see, 200 resources. If you want to overcome that and avoid problems, you can either use this particular plugin, which is available among other serverless plugins, or remembering the API consistency, you can look for the IDs of your API gateway. You can notice them on the gray line above. So there are IDs of your resources. So whenever you think about API consistency, think about the structure of your application, I mean your business logics. You would like to separate one from another, and here is a pattern we use in our serverless projects. So we try to split Lambda layers from Terraform stacks and from serverless part. In serverless part, you might notice some different, I wouldn't say microservices, but you can consider them as microservices, but I would rather say separate business logics. But I would like to, my goal is to put them behind a single common API gateway. This is the idea when I talk about API consistency. So I remember those IDs, and serverless framework gives you the opportunity to create API gateway within main or even separate CloudFormation stack. It might be even in one of your predefined services. You can add you can export the values in the outputs of CloudFormation stack. There's such way of sharing the values, the variables between different stacks. And in serverless framework, in provider section, you can import those values. So just look, we get the API gateway section, and I'm importing from the event service. I'm importing those IDs of API gateway resources, and I can use them in another business logic, which here actually I don't remember, but it's a separated business logic, not the events service, which I've already created. So there's a way of splitting your CloudFormation stack with separating your resources into different business logics, but there's also a way of keeping your API consistency via API gateway export and import features, which is available through CloudFormation outputs and imports. If you want to get more details on that, check our blog. I described this case in more details, so if you feel it's something valuable or you might need it in the future, feel free to check it. What's next? Understand your events nature. Yeah, it's pretty important. We've got 4 types of invoking your events: either push, synchronous, asynchronous event, stream-based, or poll-based way of event invocation. And whenever you choose one of them, think how it works and what pros and cons you might encounter when you use it. In terms of API gateway, think about API gateway integration. So we are trying to hide AWS Lambda behind your API gateway. So whenever you think about such kind of scenario, do not implement a long-term job. Why? There's a 29 seconds of timeout. It's the default value for API gateway service. So it shows you that this kind of event invocation forces you to just grab your event and do not pay a lot of time on analyzing that. It's rather take it and push it somewhere else to your backend. That's the first indication coming from API gateway to think about the time and putting your long-term jobs to the backend, shifting it somewhere else. Then asynchronous calls. Neither AWS Lambda nor your wallet like idle time, so time of waiting. So if you think about synchronous calls, you know that you have to wait for the response, and repeatedly ask yourself, do I have to wait for the response? Because I think in most scenarios you don't. So whenever you don't have to wait, think asynchronously. And you're gonna save your money, you're gonna save your time. And those 2 points are pretty critical for your applications. So let's jump to the example coming from Events War. So you've got this join event action. So just imagine that we get a user and he would like to join to particular event. He is sending a HTTP request to API gateway. I'm grabbing this event, and what I'm doing, I'm just pushing it to SNS, which is Simple Notification Service, AWS service, and then I'm spreading it via multicast approach to my subscribers. So in this particular example, these are queues, AWS SQS services into separated services, 2 business logics, service A and service B. Just imagine that one of them is service for events, and another one is service for members. So what I'm doing, I'm spreading the information to those queues. They are the subscribers for the SNS topics. I'm actually polling those messages via Lambda functions behind each queue, and then I can write this metadata to my DynamoDBs, because these services, these databases in this example are DynamoDBs. So as you see, in each of those steps, I do not wait for the response or doing some long-term job. Whenever I want to do something which costs time, I think about queues. So I would like to avoid the situations of creating a bottleneck on my DynamoDB, on my database. I'm thinking about queues. So doing an asynchronous way of solving problems. Streams, DynamoDB streams. There is a feature in DynamoDB called DynamoDB streams, and yeah, they promise me an easy life. As you see, synchronous calls, but I thought it's gonna be an easy implementation, but some fury behind jumping to details. So you can either have insert, modify, or remove action. So whenever you're doing an update or insertion to your items stored in DynamoDB, you get either of those three methods. You can have 4 ways of grabbing your messages from DynamoDB streams. You can have keys only, new image, old image, or new old images. Each of them forcing you to use another different logic in your AWS Lambda. It's all about what would you like to do with the event you just taking from the stream. And the example we decided to present, and the reason why did we use DynamoDB streams, was to take the data that has been stored in DynamoDB and put it into, actually stream it to Elasticsearch service, AWS Elasticsearch service, to have a better indexing of our data and better way of searching the data that we have been stored. We use DynamoDB streams in a combination of AWS Lambda and AWS Lambda as a way of avoiding failures. In case of failures, maybe it's not avoidance, but rather thinking about failures which might occur even all the time. We used dead letter queues, it's DLQ. So whenever we encountered an error, failure, timeout, no matter of what, we're just pushing this dead letter this message to dead letter queue, and we get the time or way of repeating this process once again. So it's a great way of avoiding failures. And as you see, we just grabbing the data from the stream. But Lambda reads records from the stream and invokes functions synchronously, with event actually containing stream records. So we're reading records from the stream and invoking our function synchronously. But we have to keep in mind that we get two options in terms of reading the data. We can read just new records in the stream, or use a trim horizon, which starts reading at last streamed record. Basically, it's the oldest record in the shard. Yeah, it should be which, not which. My mistake. I apologize. As you see, it's a powerful tool to retrieving the data up to last 24 hours for a given table. But DynamoDB streams are guaranteed to process your records in an order. But we've got those 24 hours. Just remember that we got 24 hours that we might grab from and read from our stream. But unfortunately, I've got some bad news for you. We know that we're just processing those data in an order. We can retrieve up to 24 hours if we need. We can select either we want to take just new data or all data and new data. And everything works fine if we succeed. And Lambda resumes polling until it receives more records. So we got the success, and we're just polling until new data is coming. But whenever a function returns an error, Lambda retries the batch until processing succeeds or data expires. So that's what I told you to remember 24 hours, because whenever you select 24 hours, so trim horizon, your data, actually your Lambda, AWS Lambda, will be invoked until the data expires, and or until the processing succeeds. And this is a detail we sometimes forget about. So my lesson from this case is to, if there is a situation where you need to process the message, separate due to an error, think about dead letter queues. So just push this message to dead letter queue, forget it, and continue retrieving the data from the stream. This is the lesson you have to remember whenever you deal with DynamoDB streams. Last but not least, think about quick actions for your events. Relying your approach in serverless taught us to pay attention to the time of execution, because this is the money, and we want to reduce costs of our executions and our applications. Just look at temp space in your Lambda function. As you know, Lambda function is being served on containers. There's no some unusual way of invocation. There's a container spinned for you via AWS mechanisms, and there is a non-persistent space called temp. It's actually a cache in memory, and it's visible, and you can read from this space as long as the function is kept warm in the memory. It's default 4.5 seconds. So it shows you that the time is the new currency whenever you think about serverless projects. This is a temporary space, so if you're designing some business logic in which you would like to do some long-term job, and I'm not telling about hiding AWS Lambda behind API gateway. I'm telling about the backend logic and some long-term jobs, some activities which need more time to be processed. Just keep in mind that temp is not the place for your results. Think about 12-factor application. There is a point 4 about external resources that you can use. Either it might be S3, it might be a database, no matter of what. Just point your result, and if you need to reprocess some part or continue your processing for another 30 minutes, just take this data from some external service rather than temp space. Yeah, and I mentioned you that it's a pretty important chapter in this presentation. It's almost the last one. Stop considering serverless as a Lambda. I've heard a lot of rumors and discussions about serverless, and whenever I listen to them, there's always AWS Lambda. And there's no bigger mistake than considering your projects as just pure AWS Lambda in the underhood. There are a lot of different services in AWS. These we've already used in Events Wall, but if you jump and check into AWS portfolio, you will find definitely a lot of different AWS services which have got those serverless features or ways of behavior when we talk about solving problems. As you see, after the first month we had over 80 lambdas, and after 3 months we have 110. But it's not the clue. It's not the point of building, serverless projects. As you can see, we've used, for example, AWS Code Build and AWS Code Pipeline for our CI/CD steps, and lots of different AWS services which are like Lego blocks. You're just taking it and using as a way of solving your particular problem. So please check the portfolios and think about your logic inside you would like to put inside your application, and definitely you will find more than just AWS Lambda. And last thoughts: experience is built on looking behind the wall. Yeah, it's constantly looking at different to different places, to different areas, and getting those lessons. So first lesson, we tend to think about cheaper, faster, easier, which leads us to either tools or services. Yeah, these are still important goals. We know that. But for me, as a conclusion for this session, serverless allows you to check whether you can solve completely different problems or validate your hypothesis without losing much attention from business goals. So, as a way of closing this session, and the last word, whenever you get the idea, it might be a technical one or non-technical way of solving some problem, and you think about the serverless, just think that it gives you the way of just looking behind the wall and seeing solutions for completely different problems, keeping in mind that yes, we have to do it in a cheaper, faster way, but do not tie yourself to tools, but to solving problems you encountered. Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to record it for you once again. I hope you enjoyed Serverless Days 2020, and I promise you, next year we're coming back with the on-site version. Take care, stay healthy, and cheers.